My name is Cassie, and the day everything changed was not the day I graduated, not the day I got my first real paycheck, not even the day I signed my name on a mortgage. It was the day my mother handed me a garbage bag full of my own clothes and told me the spare room was being converted into a home office. I was 27, it was Thanksgiving. I had driven 3 hours from my apartment, the one I had given up 2 months earlier to save money while I figured out my next move, back to the house I grew up in, with a sweet potato casserole in the passenger seat and a bottle of wine I could barely afford. I thought I was home. I thought I was coming back to something solid. My mom opened the front door before I even knocked, looked at the casserole, and said, "Oh, good, we needed another side dish." She did not hug me. She was already walking back toward the kitchen. I found out about the room after dinner. My dad had been talking all through the meal about a new online business he was starting, something involving drop shipping and motivational content. My younger brother sat across from me eating pie without making eye contact. My mom kept refilling everyone's water like she was running a restaurant. When I asked where I was supposed to sleep that night, she pointed at the couch and said the spare room was being cleared out for my dad's recording equipment. "We talked about this," she said. I had not been part of that conversation. That night, I lay on the couch under a thin blanket listening to my dad watch YouTube videos at full volume in the next room, and I did the math in my head. My savings were running low. I had left my apartment to move back in and rebuild, and now there was no room. I checked my phone. No message from my mom asking if I was okay. No text from my brother, just a notification from a job board and the sound of the refrigerator humming in the dark. By morning, I had made a decision. I was not going to beg for a couch that did not feel like mine. I loaded my bags into my car before my parents were awake, left the rest of the wine on the kitchen counter, and drove back toward the city with no plan and no place to be. That first week, I slept on an air mattress in the apartment of a woman I had worked with at a marketing agency 2 years before. We were not close enough to call it friendship, more like mutual desperation. She had a roommate who did not want me there, and I could feel it in every conversation that stopped when I walked into the room. I had $200, half a tank of gas, and a portfolio of freelance work that had not produced a new client in 6 weeks. I picked up shifts answering phones at a dental office, the kind of job that makes you feel invisible in a specific way. People talk around you, past you, about their weekend plans and their kids' soccer games, and you smile and confirm their appointments and fold yourself small so nobody has to acknowledge you exist. The pay was not enough to cover a real apartment, so I rented a room in a house with 4 other people I found through an app. The bathroom had no exhaust fan. There was always someone's pasta on the stove. I kept my things in labeled containers because nothing stayed where you left it. I had been doing graphic design on the side for years, small stuff, logos for local businesses, social media templates, the occasional wedding invitation. I was decent at it but had never treated it seriously. Now, with nothing else to hold on to, I started treating it like a second job. I stayed up until midnight with my laptop on my thighs, applying to every remote design gig I could find, sending cold emails to small businesses whose branding looked like it had been made in 2009, offering a free audit if they let me show them what I could do differently. Most of those emails went unanswered. A handful wrote back asking for a rate sheet. A few actually hired me. I kept a spreadsheet of every pitch and every response and every dollar that came in. Because when you are living in a house with strangers and eating the same 3 meals on a loop, tracking your money is the only thing that feels like control. One of the cold emails I sent was to a woman who ran a small home goods brand out of Charlotte, North Carolina. She sold handmade ceramic pieces through her own website and had about 40,000 Instagram followers, but packaging that looked completely disconnected from everything else she was putting out into the world. I sent her a 3 paragraph email and 2 mock-ups I had made specifically for her brand, just to show what I meant. She wrote back within 20 minutes. She said nobody had ever sent her unsolicited work that actually made her want to cry. We jumped on a call that afternoon and she hired me for a full brand refresh over the next 3 months. That project paid better than anything I had done before. It also led to two referrals, both of whom had friends, and so on. Within 8 months, I had gone from answering phones at a dental office to running a one-person design studio out of my laptop, from anywhere with a decent Wi Fi connection. I kept my expenses low. I stayed in the room share house longer than I needed to, even when the money started coming in. There was a specific kind of fear that comes from having lost your footing before. This quiet voice that says, "Do not get comfortable. Do not assume any of this is permanent." I put every dollar I could into savings. I paid off a credit card I had been carrying since my mid 20s. I started reading personal finance newsletters at 6 in the morning with my coffee because I needed to understand in real terms what I was building toward and whether it could hold. By the time I had been freelancing full time for about 2 years, something had shifted. My income had stabilized. I had a small but steady client roster. My credit score had climbed to a number that made me feel like a different person. And the room share house, which had been tolerable for a while, had become a place I was actively leaving in my mind every single day. I started looking at condos. Not houses, not yet, just something with my name on it that nobody could take away because they needed it for a recording studio. The search took longer than I expected. I toured places that smell like old carpet, and places that were priced for people with twice my income, and one place that was genuinely perfect, and then fell through 3 days before closing because of a seller dispute I had nothing to do with. My real estate agent, a very patient man named Roland, kept reminding me that this was normal, that the right place existed, that I was in a much stronger financial position than most first time buyers he worked with. I did not find that comforting exactly, but I held on to it. Then I walked into a one-bedroom condo in a converted textile building on the east side of town. The ceilings were 14 feet high. The windows ran from floor to nearly ceiling along the south wall and let in afternoon light that made the space feel like it was breathing. The kitchen had a butcher block island and open shelving and a window above the sink that looked onto a small courtyard where someone had planted a lemon tree. I stood in the middle of the living room for a long moment and thought about all the rooms I had made myself small in, all the spaces I had apologized for taking up, and I felt something I had not felt in years. I felt like I was allowed to be exactly this size. I made an offer. It was accepted. I sat in the closing attorney's office and signed page after page with a hand that would not stop shaking, and when the title passed and the keys were in my hand, I sat in my car in the parking garage for 15 minutes, unable to drive, because I was crying in a way I had not let myself cry in a long time. That night, I slept on the floor of an empty condo with a camping pad and a pillow I had carried in a garbage bag, and it was the best sleep I had gotten in 4 years. I did not tell my parents right away. I posted one photo on my personal Instagram, the lemon tree through the kitchen window, with no caption. It got 112 likes. My mom sent me a heart reaction and nothing else. A few months passed. I furnished the place slowly and deliberately. A couch I actually liked. A dining table I found at an estate sale and refinished myself. A real bed frame for the first time in my adult life. I got a plant, then three more. I learned how the afternoon light moved through the rooms and adjusted everything accordingly. I had a dinner party. I hosted a birthday celebration for a friend and watched people laugh too loudly and stay too late. And I thought, this is what a home does. This is what it is supposed to feel like. Then one Saturday afternoon, my dad called. He opened with small talk, which he never does. Asked about work, asked if I was staying healthy, mentioned the weather in a way that had nothing to do with weather. I was standing in my kitchen making coffee, and I could feel something coming the way you feel a shift in pressure before it rains. He said things had been rough. The drop shipping business had not worked out. He was in between jobs. My mom had cut back her hours because her back was giving her trouble. My brother had moved back in and was contributing what he could, but it was not enough. They had missed two mortgage payments on the house and were working with the bank to figure out their options. And then he said, "Your mother and I were hoping we could come stay with you for a while, just until we get back on our feet." I asked how long a while meant. He said a few months, maybe through the end of the year, maybe a little longer. I took a breath. I told him I would think about it. That night, I called my closest friend, a woman who had known me since college and had watched my parents' dynamics up close over the years. She listened to everything I said and then was quiet for a moment before she said, Cassie, you know how this ends. I did know. I had watched my mother turn other people's generosity into obligation. I had watched my father's temporary situations become permanent. I had left a garbage bag of my own clothes in my car on Thanksgiving morning. I knew exactly how this would end, but I also felt the pull, the particular guilt that belongs specifically to daughters, the one that sounds like, but they are your parents, and what kind of person lets their family end up on the street? I talked to my accountant. I talked to a real estate attorney I had been referred to through Roland. I asked specific questions about what it would mean financially and legally if my parents lived in my home, whether any arrangement could give them rights to the property, what I needed to do to protect myself. The attorney was direct. She said temporary occupants without a lease have more rights than most people realize, particularly in my state. She said if they stayed more than 30 days and I did not have clear documentation, removing them could require formal eviction proceedings. She said if they were listed anywhere on the property, even informally, it created complications I did not want. I asked if there was anything they could do if I said no. She said, not if my name was the only one on the deed. I called my dad back 2 days later. I told him I was not able to have them move in. I said it calmly and I said it once, and I did not add a list of reasons because I had learned that reasons are just doors people try to open. He was quiet. Then he said he had not expected that from me. I said I was sorry things were hard. I meant it. I just did not mean it enough to undo what I had built. My mom called 20 minutes later. Her voice was a different temperature entirely, colder and more deliberate, the voice she uses when she has decided to make something a confrontation. She said I had always been selfish. She said she did not raise me to turn my back on family. She said I had a whole condo with a second bedroom sitting empty, which was barely true because the second bedroom was my office and it existed because I worked from home and my work paid for the condo she was trying to move into. She said, that place could be a family resource. You have more than enough. I told her I disagreed. She said, I would regret this. I said, I hoped not. Then my brother weighed in by text, a long message that was mostly a reminder of various things our parents had done for me over the years, presented as if he was building a legal case. I read it twice. I thought about Thanksgiving, about the garbage bag, about lying on a couch under a thin blanket listening to my dad watch YouTube. I did not respond. What came next, I had not anticipated. About a week after the calls, I got an alert from my credit monitoring app. There was a new account on my credit report, a retail credit card in my name, with a balance of just under $2,000. I did not open this account. I went still in the middle of my living room and thought about every time my mother had asked to borrow my laptop to check something. Every form I had helped my dad fill out because he did not understand the online interface. Every piece of mail that had come to our old house that I had opened and signed because nobody else was going to do it. I pulled my full credit report, not the simplified version, the actual report from all three bureaus. There were two accounts I did not recognize, both opened during the 2 year stretch when I was still helping my parents manage their household paperwork. One retail card, one personal loan with a lender I had never heard of. Both had my social security number. Both had been paid sporadically and then stopped. The total in delinquent balances had my name attached to it. My hands were steady when I made the call to the attorney. I am not sure how. She told me what I was looking at was likely unauthorized use of my personal information, and that if my parents had opened accounts in my name without my knowledge or consent, that was identity fraud, regardless of the family relationship. She told me to document everything, gather every piece of communication I could find, and not to contact my parents about it directly yet. I spent the next 3 evenings going through emails, texts, old photographs of documents I had taken for my own records. I found a text from my mother asking me to send her a photo of my social security card 3 years earlier. I had sent it. At the time, she said it was for a form she needed for her health insurance. I had not thought about it since. The attorney helped me file disputes with all three credit bureaus. We sent written notices to both lenders explaining that I had not authorized these accounts and providing a timeline. We also sent a formal cease and desist letter to my parents, which I did not warn them about in advance. My mother's response came by email. It was long and contained phrases like ingratitude and this is what we get and I hope you can live with yourself. She did not address the accounts directly, which told me everything I needed to know about whether she knew they existed. My dad called and said this had gone too far. I agreed. I told him exactly how far I thought it had gone, with dates and account numbers, and he did not have an answer for that. He said they had been under a lot of pressure. I said I had been under a lot of pressure too, starting on a Thanksgiving when I drove 3 hours with a sweet potato casserole and came home to a garbage bag. The credit bureaus completed their investigations over the following months. One lender closed the account and removed it from my report without further proceedings. The other referred the matter to their fraud department, and somewhere in that process, something got flagged and forwarded. I am not entirely certain of the sequence because these things move through institutions in ways that are not transparent to the person at the center of them. What I know is that I received a call from a federal investigator asking me to provide a written statement about what I knew, when I knew it, and what I had signed or not signed. I answered every question honestly. I had not knowingly participated in anything. I had trusted people who used that trust against me. My parents' financial situation did not improve. The house went through a lengthy foreclosure process and was eventually sold by the bank. My brother moved into an apartment with a friend. My parents ended up in a two-bedroom rental about 40 minutes from where they used to live. My mom's Facebook posts shifted from family photos to vague statements about people who abandon their loved ones when times get hard. She never used my name. She did not need to. I know all of this partly because my aunt, my mom's older sister, stayed in touch with me throughout the whole thing. She was the one person in my family who had watched from a distance and understood what had actually happened. She sent me a text once that just said, "I'm glad you got out." I read it in my kitchen, standing by the window with the lemon tree in the courtyard below, and I had to set my phone down for a minute. The accounts came off my credit report. My score climbed back to where it had been and then past it. My business kept growing. I hired a part-time contractor to help with overflow work, a young woman just out of design school who reminded me a little of the person I had been when I was sending cold emails at midnight with no idea if any of them would ever land. I think about what I would say to her sometimes, not as a mentor speech, but just as one person to another. I would say that the people who are supposed to protect you do not always, and that finding that out is one of the worst things that happens in a life. And also one of the most clarifying. I would say that a home is not a family asset just because someone declares it one. That words like blood and loyalty get used most aggressively by people who want something from you. That you are allowed to draw a line around the thing you built and say, "This part is mine." My condo still has the lemon tree in the courtyard, though I think it belongs to the unit below me and I just have the view. The light still moves through the south windows in the afternoon, the way it did the first day I stood there. I bought a second plant and then a third, and at some point I stopped counting. I have friends who come over and sit in the kitchen and drink coffee and talk about ordinary things. And sometimes I look around at all of it and think about the Thanksgiving couch, about the air mattress in my former coworker's apartment, about the room share house with the pasta always on the stove. I'm not grateful to my parents for what they did. I want to be precise about that because I think there is a version of this story where the narrator ties it up with a bow and says, "I turned my pain into purpose and I could not have done it without them." That is not true and it has never been true. What they did was cruel, and the cruelty did not stop being cruel just because I survived it. What I am is clear. Clear about what I owe people, clear about what I am willing to give, clear about the difference between love and leverage. That clarity cost me something I will never fully calculate. But I carry it with me everywhere I go, including through the front door of the place that has my name on it, the one nobody handed me, the one nobody can hand back. They wanted a family resource. What they got was a closed door and the sound of me on the other side of it. Finally, taking up exactly as much space as I am allowed. I used to think the hardest part of what happened to me was the Thanksgiving itself. The drive home, the garbage bag, the couch, the thin blanket. I used to think that was the wound. But I understand now that the wound was older than that night. It had been building for years in every form I signed without reading, every bill I covered without being asked, every time I made myself smaller so the house could run smoother. The Thanksgiving was just the moment it finally had a shape I could not talk myself out of seeing. What I know about cause and effect, not in any mystical sense, just in the plain human sense, is that the choices people make do not disappear, they accumulate. My parents made choices consistently over a long stretch of time. They chose to use my trust. They chose to open accounts in my name and hope I would never look closely enough to notice. They chose to walk into my home and call it theirs. And each of those choices produced something, not as punishment from the universe, just as consequence. The natural, inevitable result of having treated another person's life like a resource to be drawn from. I made choices too. I chose to get up from the air mattress every morning. I chose to send cold emails at midnight. I chose to call the attorney instead of calling my parents. I chose to protect the thing I had built, even when the guilt made my chest feel like it was caving in. Those choices also accumulated into a credit score, into a client roster, into a condo with 14-foot ceilings and a lemon tree in the courtyard below. The part nobody tells you about integrity is that it is not dramatic. It does not feel like a move in moment. It feels like filling out a dispute form at 11 o'clock at night when you are exhausted and scared and you would genuinely rather be doing anything else. It feels like saying no to your own parents in a calm voice and then sitting with the silence after. It feels like doing the right thing for yourself before anyone validates that it is the right thing. Because nobody is coming to validate it. You just have to trust your own read on the situation and act accordingly. Cassie in this story is not exceptional. That is the part I want to say clearly. She is someone who got pushed past a point she could not come back from, and then decided to move forward instead of waiting for an apology that was never going to come. That is not heroism. That is just a decision. One that required her to be honest about what had happened, clear eyed about what was still happening, and disciplined enough to build something real out of the mess she had been handed. If you are somewhere in the middle of your own version of this, I want you to know that the middle is the hardest part, not the beginning, when the adrenaline keeps you moving, and not the end, when the clarity comes. The middle, when you are not sure yet whether any of it was worth it, and you are still close enough to the people who hurt you that their voices are louder than your own. Stay in it. Keep your records. Ask the questions that feel uncomfortable to ask. The answers will tell you what you need to do, and you are more capable of doing it than you currently believe.